Today in the Magick Kitchen, we are joined by Amy Blackthorn, author and professional intuitive.
I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elyse Welles.
And welcome to the Magick Kitchen Podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between. Pursuing your spiritual path alone is really difficult, but so is finding community. That's why I started a Patreon community, to help you overcome obstacles and clear up confusions while making friends and finding connection along the way. You'll have a direct line to me for all of your questions and receive tons of benefits for joining my Patreon, from thank yous to ritual resources, journal prompts and reflective exercises, downloadable guides and posters, exclusive Magick Kitchen Podcast and Seeking Numina updates and early access. Find community no matter where you are. Visit patreon.com/Elyse Welles. I can't wait to help you on your journey. Leandra and I's interview with Amy Blackthorn went delightfully long, so we decided to split it into two parts. So this week, you'll be listening to part one, and next we really get into the personal and nitty-gritty, very Samhain-appropriate conversations about the craft and past lives and trance work. It's a really good conversation. We didn't want to cut any of it out, so we decided to do two parts. And her book, Botanical Wellness, comes out November 1st, which means you have the chance to pre-order it now. And you'll see the link for blackthornbotanicals.com below in the description. So without further ado, enjoy Amy Blackthorn, intuitive witch and best-selling author.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are really excited to have you here.
Yeah.
You are one of my favorite authors. I've read every book. Every time you have a new one, I'm super excited. I actually wrote my first ever professional book review, and I feel like I never even sent it to you because I was probably really embarrassed at the time, but for Sacred Smoke. And I'm just so excited that we're here, we're talking, and that people are now able to read your sixth book. Six, right?
Fifth.
Botanical Wellness.
Botanical Wellness
Fifth.
is number 5.
Lucky number 5. And a bit about Amy for those who might not know this prolific woman. Amy Blackthorn is a professional intuitive and author of 5 books, including Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, Blackthorn's Protection Magic, and her recent book, Blackthorn's Botanical Wellness. She has a certificate in aromatherapy and incorporates her experiences in a traditional witchcraft with her horticultural studies. Amy's company, Blackthorn's Botanicals, creates tea based on magical herbal formulas, and she has appeared in print as well as on Coast to Coast AM, HuffPo Live, Netflix's Top 10 Secrets and Mysteries, which is so cool, in an episode about supernatural abilities. And she's overall one of the coolest witches you'll ever meet and talk to. So thanks for being here.
Oh my goodness, nobody can live up to that. I'm just going to sit here and be shy for the next hour. I don't know.
You already do live up to that.
Yeah,
So
these
kind.
are just facts. None of this is opinion.
Right.
She wrote 5 books and she's awesome. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Awesome.
So one thing that I really like about your books, and this is clearly part of the intuitive witchness, but they're always so timely. When Protection Magic came out, it felt useful at the time. Like we have, especially in America, we've been seeing like an increase in violence, especially towards women, people of color. And then in the past few months, we're recording this in 2022, we've been seeing a lot of uptick in violence, in gun violence, and lately even threats to the witch community. So how did you know? How did you know this book was going to be so important for people?
It's funny. I've been working as an intuitive professionally since 1999. And it's gotten to the point now where I get little whispers and nudges when things are capital T things. And it's that's the funny thing. It's never really specific when it's global because things happen so quickly and they move so fast. At Thanksgiving 2019, it was just like maybe a week or two before American Thanksgiving. My crew, my theys and thems, started giving me little nudges. I'd be in the grocery store and they're like, grab a couple extra, like put a little bit more in there. And I'm thinking, because at Thanksgiving, everything, especially canned goods, get, very a lot of sale. There's a half price or better. So there's stacks and stacks of cans, and they're like, grab a couple extra, and there's no issue with having a few more things in the pantry. But it was every time I went to the grocery store and I'm like, okay, at some point the sale is going to be over and I've got a pantry in the basement that is now full. What do you want? And it was never this like, holy crap, the world is ending. It was just like, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit extra. What if somebody comes by and they don't have enough? You can send them home with a food bank box.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's these little nudges that say, this is the right time for this thing. And so it was really great because when I proposed protection magic, I was looking for ways for there to be a one-stop shop for these specific items. Instead of looking through 30 different books for all the different things on protection magic and each of those bits and pieces, now they can go to one place. If you want to learn about herbs in protection magic or rocks in protection magic or energy work with protection magic, it's all there. I'm like, okay, that sounds very reasonable. But we have to think so far ahead in publishing that when I was looking at this, I was looking at having that opportunity for everyone to be on the same page, pun absolutely intended, when it comes to protection magic. But my editor, the amazing Magick Kitchen, is looking at this as well and saying, okay, this seems really important. This seems like a good time. I always send in 2 book proposals at a time so they can pick which one they feel is the right thing. And it's funny because when I sent in protection magic, I also sent in Botanical Wellness. And they were like, yes, we need this right now, both of them. Let's go. But when I gave the proposal to my editor, she added in just this little niblet that I didn't even think of. And so when she called back to say, hey, they want to buy your proposal, they want to do this book, she had included the tagline underneath, A Witch's Guide to Mental and Physical Self-Defense. She had gone to once you put in a proposal, it doesn't just go to one guy and he says, okay, yes or no. It goes to a pub board. So there's sales, there's marketing, there's all the honchos, and everybody votes and says, this sounds like something that could really happen. This sounds really good, or they don't. So it's not just one person having all the phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty little face. So Judicus had added the physical self-defense. I did not put that in my proposal, but I've been working executive protection for 15 years and I teach private self-defense workshops all over. I've been doing this forever. I've been a certified self-defense instructor since 2010. And then I got my black belt and was teaching in personal safety presentations for martial arts since the late 90s. So each of these pieces was already a part of me, but I had been working in executive protection for so long. It was a separate box. There's During the Day Amy, and there's Amy Blackthorn, and never the twain shall meet. And I just knew that this was a part of my life. But I had been at the building where I was head of security for a couple of years, and it was really soul sucking. I didn't have any time to be Amy Blackthorn. I didn't have that part of me. It was just like limp in a box, those flagging flowers that haven't been watered in long enough, and they just start to wilt because I didn't have time for witchcraft. I didn't have time for spirituality. I didn't have time to connect with my friends. So I got rid of that job and I trained my replacement. And my very first day as a joyfully unemployed person, I started a witchcraft company by accident. So I had kept them so separate for so long. Like I had my work people who knew me, Amy, and then I had my witchy people who know me, Amy, over here. And Judica was like, you're not in the broom closet anymore. You can put them together. It's like, this hadn't even occurred to me. this is such a beautiful and magical experience that I knew that I could take the materials that I had learned, spent so much time cultivating and helping people protect themselves magically. I could absolutely take that physical defense and put them in the same book. I never thought I would be lucky enough to be able to put those together. So bless Judika. I would buy her a pony if she had room for one.
Well, and that was one of my favorite parts of that book, Protection Magic, was it was so practical. There was no part of it that anyone, witchy or anti-witch, could read that book and say, oh, this is all woo-woo. Like, no, it was very practical knowledge. So much so that my atheist husband was like, can I borrow that when you're done? And like, he actually read, I highlighted all the parts for him that I was like, you're going to want to read this. And he read like most of it. And he's dyslexic too. So he really doesn't read. Like, it's so time consuming for him. And he's like, this is really important stuff. Like, I think more people should be reading this book. And he like, it's such a great book. It's a really, really useful, practical book. And I would say that about all of your books. You really have a good grounding in your writing that takes people out of this like ethereal headspace that witchcraft can get into, and reminds people that, no, this is real world. Like Leandra always says, one of my favorite Leandra quotes is, witchcraft is blood and bone.
Yes, 1,000%. It's lovely and sweet to be able to have the woo, but we are living in this world that doesn't always understand and accept the woo. So we have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. When we're taking those bits and pieces and bites, we have to understand that, especially when people are reading it in a book and we're not just, it's a 30-second TikTok, people have to understand that this is grounded in our everyday practice. If I can fit this in between work and kids and, having a life and friendships outside of my family unit, I'm going to have to do that. And I can't do that if it's all airy fairy and not grounded in the reality in which I'm a part of.
And I think that we, as witches, like going into the mundane, we, like you talked about compartmentalizing your craft versus your professional life. I think we become very good at that, where we get so dynamic in that and so dichotomous in it that we forget, and it becomes that soul sucking thing. I relate to that because I came from corporate America, where it was all 3-piece suits and, very much the boys club. So, you didn't get to express anything that was vital to your spiritual development or nurturing.
Yeah. And when I was, sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, I'm just saying, like, when I came home, that's when I could breathe. That's, trying to do the things on the side that filled my spirit. But then I realized like that wasn't sustainable. I had to integrate them. I had to make my witchcraft my lifestyle. And I totally relate to that.
Absolutely. When I was, I talked about this a little bit in the book, as the head of security it was 2 high rises in Delaware. So it's 35 floors of people's lives in the cup of my little hand. I was getting calls at 3 a.m. to put out literal fires. My very first day training as an officer, before I even took over security, we had a bomb threat, a death threat, and a suspicious package in one afternoon. My first day training, I wasn't even on the floor by myself yet. And so this was a huge deal because Delaware is 85% of the world's Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in Delaware. So being the head of security for the 2 most expensive commercial real estate properties in the state was a huge and very responsible thing. But it got to the point because I was up at 2 and 3 a.m. People are calling me. There's emergencies. Somebody doesn't show up for work. I've got to go in at 3 a.m. because somebody's car broke down and they can't get to work. So I didn't even have an after work to take my my security jacket off and hang it up. I had to be that person 24 hours a day, and it just eats your soul. One day I came into work. I'm at the security desk at 5 a.m. every morning. I'm not a morning person. I am so late that I'm early. So I get in at 5 a.m. and I'm relieving my guy who's on the desk overnight, and he goes downstairs, relieves that guy. He's got about an hour for the next person comes in. We've got this little shuffle shift going on. And he says, he's very self-satisfied and proud of himself. So I'm grabbing my radio and I'm clocking in and I'm checking my messages for the morning before all the visitors start rolling in for the day. And he's like smirking over his glasses and he says, "So you're a witch, huh?" Oh, no. This is something everyone who's ever broken those two pieces apart fears this. Like, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? What is happening? And so when he lets this bomb drop, he's very proud of himself because I have kept myself so compartmentalized. I didn't talk about home, anything related to home, because I knew I'd let something witchy slip out. And I'm like, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
So here I am, his boss, and he's so frustrated to know literally anything about me that he went on Walkabout and found me on the internet. Like, oh, so he found out about Amy Blackthorn without any feedback from me. And then I'm like, oh crap, who's he been talking to? I have no idea where this came from. And Delaware is such a small state that people don't have a whole lot of frame of reference. There are less than 1 million people living in the state of Delaware. It's teeny. It's the second smallest state. So I've got to figure out, who did he run into at the grocery store? Who is he even talking to? How did he figure this out? So he goes downstairs and he immediately tells the first 5 people who walk through the door. And this is now, 30 seconds later, and it's a big joke to everybody. And they don't understand how insulting this is. The audacity to go rooting through my private life with something I wasn't willing to share with you. But then, there's the guy watching the video cameras and he calls me up in a panic saying, "Amy, did you just change the color of the orchids in the basket behind you?" What? Everybody thinks it's a big joke. It's like, if somebody found out there was a different minority faith, somebody found out I was Buddhist, like, is this where the jokes come in? No, I really think not. But because it's revolving around and involving witchcraft, now we're allowed to joke about that. And it was really disappointing to have someone I thought as a work friend to now have this experience. I was definitely put out that day. And it's been, goodness, it's been 9 years, I think, since it happened. And we're really good friends now. But I'll tell you what, that day was he was a very lucky duck.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast, like how important the broom closet is for some people. And even if it's, you're out of the broom closet with some friends, but, like not everybody has pseudonyms. I use a pseudonym. I have a few personal life people who do know what I'm up to, but I also don't try too hard to hide it. Like at this point in my life, but at the same time, moving to Greece, it's actually illegal to practice witchcraft here.
Oh my God.
So like, I can't find any record of anyone ever being taken to court for anything, but that is something always in the back of my mind. Like, when I pick my hashtags, when I write my captions online, like, do I think the Greek government cares this much? Probably not. I use a VPN, so don't know how they could, but it's something I think about and I see like what that's doing. And then when I see that in America, a lot of these threats are coming up. I saw one event had to be canceled it was the Bible Belt. I want to say it was Texas. They were having their yearly like Litha and they had to cancel it because they were getting so many like threats on their Eventbrite and their Facebook event page. Like, I don't know. And you actually, Amy, you shared that TikTok about like people are advocating for witch burning again.
Yeah.
I am still processing that. That was like a week ago. I still think about it in quiet moments, like that's where we're at.
And they're proud of it. They're so excited. A relative, we'll say, started talking about how now that the law is going right, you're going to have to, go and be with Jesus and it'll finally fix you. Like there's something wrong with being a member of a different religion. It is so scary. I mean, I've been run off the road into oncoming traffic because I had witch's heel on my bumper. Like This man is screaming out the driver's side window with these wild eyes and spittle flying out of his mouth because, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Like this. And Delaware's a blue state. Delaware's very progressive.
Yeah.
It's baffling to me how these pockets just, not only are they existing, but they're starting to thrive and feel empowered to commit violence against other people just because they have a different religious belief.
Yeah. And I think that's why I felt it so timely that wellness is coming right after protection, because that's where the broom closet can come in. Like, we have no obligation to share our beliefs with others. Even, like our friends, like we don't actually have to ever talk about what our witchcraft is like to them. Even if they know we're witches, like we have these boundaries that we can set. And when we talk about protecting ourselves, that's part of it. But then I think the second half is actually pursuing our wellness.
Absolutely.
Are there any things you talk about in the book that lead us to that, like that help us feel well as witches, like empowered in our craft?
Absolutely. One of my favorite parts is, I love and appreciate all the current books that are on the shelf for wellness and for self-care, and they're so important. But when I was doing the research to write the proposal, like, why is this book necessary? Why is this something that people really need to have right now? Is there not a single one out of the, we'll say probably 20 different, self-care books that came out in the last 5 years. None of them talk about chronic illness. None of them talk about chronic pain. They are beautiful and helpful and needed books, but they didn't reflect my experience. I have been a chronic pain sufferer since 2002 when I got run over by a tractor trailer. Yeah, it's a big thing. And none of those understood that my experience will always be one of pain. Now, the scale of pain that's offered to my body is going to vary different day to day, but it's still always going to be there. So being able to connect with my body as a witch, as an embodied person, needs to reflect at least part of that experience, because otherwise I'm denying who I am. I'm denying my daily experience. I can go to ritual and have a great fun and enjoy Beltane, and there's bonfires, but I'm going to have to do a lot of math to see how much fun I'm going to be able to have. And there's a lot of time that goes into, okay, well, if I'm there for this many minutes, if I take a chair, I'll be able to sit down a little bit longer. So you're constantly doing math, trying to figure out how much life you're allowed to live. And it's so terrifyingly sad to have to plan every ritual months in advance so you can see just exactly how much you are allowed to enjoy the life that's being given to you. So in Botanical Wellness, one of my favorite parts is empowering our ritual tools with a servitor to help us with those daily care tasks. When we talk about things like, okay, well, I took a shower, that's my self-care for the day. We're telling ourselves that we have to earn the right to bathe our bodies and take care of ourselves in the most simple way. You don't have to earn your food. You don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to earn a shower. These are yours. Take them when you need them. When we're talking about self-care, it's not this nebulous, oh, okay, well, this will make me feel better, so it automatically qualifies.
Yeah.
You don't have to earn your daily care tasks. So embodying our ritual tools with a little magical helper to help us make the doctor's visits and appointments over the phone that are more draining than the actual visit itself. Sometimes waiting through the press 1 for this doctor, press 2 for that doctor. It's soul sucking. So to be able to have a magical helper that you created to help you do these things is amazing. And so we break down each ritual tool by what magical helper you might want to work with and create to make sure that you have the help that you do. Whether you're a single person or not, you are going to need help that a partner either cannot or will not provide for you. And that can be such a debilitating feeling to have to depend on someone else for your mere existence. So creating those magical helpers to embody our needs in a ritual way says that magic is still helpful. This is not, I'm going to think nice thoughts at my quartz crystal and it'll glow. This is, I have created a being out of pure magic to help me care, exist, and thrive as a witch in a body that might not necessarily listen to the things we needed to do that day.
I think that's a great example of how to incorporate the magic into the mundane too. It doesn't have to be this separate entity. And I love how you embody your tools, or, creating an amulet or creating a sigil on your skin or something that helps you get through what you need to do that day. And yeah, I feel like everything that's set up in our culture and our society is soul sucking. So we have to make it less so, right?
And it's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's part of what brought me to move to Greece is this, Greece is a socialist country. It's Eastern Europe. Like, we think of it as like Europe, but it's the Balkans. Like, we're chill out here. Like, Greece is very laid back. Like, if you want to make plans with somebody, it's going to be last minute. And if they want to plan in advance, it's going to be pushed back an hour because they forgot. Like, that's kind of the vibe here. And It takes a lot of getting used to, but it reminds me of why America functions in like that opposite way. Like, I still have to remind myself to not get like, my anxiety will spike when somebody's like, hey, come out for a drink. And it's 10:30 at night. I'm like, I've been in my pajamas since 6:30. I don't really know how to tell them this here, because that's just what they'll do. And it'll be, 9:00 and they'll be having a coffee. So, but it's that living in the moment, that not separating the magic from the mundane, that really makes Greece feel so at peace. Like, it's also an ancient land. We've got spiritual sites. We don't really see a history of violence, especially a recent history of violence in most of Greece. There has been warring conflicts here and there on different islands and with Turkey. But for the most part, like, these things resolve without much loss of life or like massive devastation. And I think it all comes back to the societal expectations. Like, folk magic, witchcraft is illegal, but folk magic is mandatory. That's honestly the best thing to describe Greek way of thinking. Like, if you don't have an evil eye on, like like the mati, like the circular blue eye, people will stop you and be like, "Doof, doof," like a fake spit on you. Because even with COVID, like through their masks, like people will do this because they want to make sure that you're not like could be attracting this. It's on people's cars. I wear my hair down a lot, and I've had old women, it's usually older crone energy women, they'll stop me and be like, put your hair up. Like, you're attracting the evil eye. You're letting it in. And it's interesting because, in the West, we do not magic to protect ourselves with our hair. So I really think that when society gets so into this feature of sucking our souls out, the folk magic starts to leave, and we're seeing it come back. I do think we're seeing it come back. Like, we have some great witches like yourself writing books to bring it back, but there's so much daily intentional things we can do. Like, so many, they don't have, like, I don't take this necklace off. My evil eye is just permanently on. I also have one on my ankle. So I feel like I'm really just holistically protected. These are the things. And I love that you have a section on tools, because I think tools intimidate a lot of witches, new and old.
Oh yeah.
And they definitely shouldn't. Once we get started with them, I don't think they're too scary.
And there's such a beautiful range of tools that are utilized from different sections of the witchcraft community. Like, British traditional witchcraft will have their own set of ideas and tools and pieces. For example, swords get used a lot more in traditional witchcraft. And if you handed a sword to somebody who was a newer practitioner, they might be confused because it's not something that gets utilized in our magic here as often in eclectic circles. I've done so many different, I feel like I've done it all at this point. I just feel really mentally old. It's just like, oh, back in my day, I'm 40. This is not a thing. But it's so funny to see how different sections of the community really embrace other things. If I was using a stang in ritual someone else might be really confused as to what exactly I'm doing or what it is or where it came from or what its ritual purpose is. So it's beautiful to be able to talk about these things in a way where we are embodying our tools, where we are making sure that we have that, not just the physical connection, but the magical and ritual connection to the greater pieces of our liturgical universe, so to speak. The having tools that embody such very specific and empowered jobs, it's beautiful. But if we don't talk about it, especially things that are limited to more initiatory practices, how are people going to know and preserve that language moving forward? We'll say 30 years ago, finding a book that discussed use of any bodily fluid was verboten. It's not happening. It's not happening. Don't do it. So it's gotten to the point where it's been so eschewed, especially by specific publishers, that people think, oh, ew, that's not a thing, because they have no frame of reference for it. So if we don't talk about it, those things go away. It changes the nature of magic.
And I love this because I think it's such a testament to witches who have been practicing 25, 30, 40 years. Like, we've seen this evolution of witchcraft and how it's gone from this ew gross to like I'm gonna pee in a jar.
Oh yeah.
Like, the folk magic is really coming back, which that is the roots, and cursing, even like cursing, binding, crossing, like those were our roots of witchcraft. Like, it's not this taboo that we were led to believe in these early books where everybody was trying to be nice and fluffy bunny. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think when other people kind of discredit these witches who have been around for decades, to see this evolution, there's wisdom there. There is such a nugget of knowledge there that it gets missed when we're like, oh, well, I'm going to follow this person because they've been practicing 10 years and they know everything, but they don't. Like, we don't even know everything. No. We've been practicing for decades,
Yeah. And I think it's a testament to the spiral of life we're living through, where like Druidry was never written down. It's an orally passed tradition. And yet now I would argue there's probably more, maybe even like twice as more, maybe 10 times as more Druids as there ever were in like a century, maybe a 1,000-year period before this. And when I went to Delphi, one of the guides that were there, the tour guides, not the spirit guides, those were there too. She said, Delphi sees 1.4 million visitors a year. That is more visitors than they ever saw in pre-Christianity in total. And that site is between 4,000 and 8,000 years old, depending where you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the power of witchcraft. Like, it gets quieter, but then it gets louder, and then it might get quieter, but it's still there. Like, the silent majority a lot of the time. And we're spiraling back. I think we're getting louder again. And I think that's where the wellness comes in. Like, when we're feeling our energy and we're empowered in our craft, we aren't going to be as easily cowed by the threats. Like, we have so much visibility now as witches, way more than any generation before. Like, every year I feel like witches get more visibility, more Googleability. Like, people who are confused have no right anymore to think that we sacrifice animals or worship Satan, and like all these crazy misnomers that like seem to still actually be quite prevalent. Mm-hmm. I think they're fading, like, with every passing year.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a month ago. My neighbor stopped by. The dog had got out and she saw me chasing, and she knows I'm disabled. So chasing is not really my thing. And scooping up my little blue pit bull, taking her in the house. She came over to see if I was okay. And so we're sitting in the middle of my kitchen floor drinking lavender seltzer and just talking about stuff. And she says, okay, so I got to ask, are you Wiccan? Now, 20 years ago, she would have said, are you a witch? But she specifically picked up and was like, I heard of this thing, and all the neighbors talk about you. So is this a real thing? And she's sitting in the middle of my kitchen where the breakfast nook that comes built into my house is the kitchen altar. There's there's a 3-foot statue of Diana in the middle of the breakfast nook, and she's adorned with beads, and there's a Morgan, there's 3 different Hecate statues. There's, everybody's got their own spot. And it's like, I like that she still had to ask, even after seeing the kitchen and my various and sundry gods hanging out in the kitchen with me.
That's funny.
She's like, the neighbors talk about this. I was like, there's a reason that they know. When I first moved here, when I first bought the house, I was 23. And I moved in, I had witchy bumper stickers on my car, and I was so desperate to be who I was, because growing up, I was homeless. I had nothing that was mine. 2 pairs of pants that I had to wear at the same time because they had holes in different places. To be a person who owns a house, much less at 23, was mind-boggling. So I had witchy bumper stickers on my car and didn't even think like this would be an issue until one day I walked out on a Sunday morning to go to brunch with some friends, and someone has spray painted witch itch screw you on my driveway in red and green paint on my black coated driveway. So it's very, you can't miss it. So I put out the equivalent of a little free library with a printout from The Witch's Voice, their frequently asked questions, when The Witch's Voice was still a thing. Bless that. So people could say like, okay, what is this thing that people are saying about you? Let me see this little frequently asked questions flyer. And it was just a couple questions and answers. But it was like, I would rather people hear this from me than Google the wrong thing or listen to other neighbors gossip. Like there's going to be some limitations there, but at least people had the opportunity to at least hear that I wasn't in the backyard sacrificing babies.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. Let them come to you. You're not like putting it in people's mailboxes and then they're saying, oh, she tried to recruit me to witchcraft. That one gets me the most. I'm like, do you know how hard it is to join a coven? Like, you got to read a lot. There's meetings. It's a year and a day before they, some of these covens will even let you join a Sabbath. Like, we ain't recruiting.
I actually had that.
Take money. Like,
I had that with my sister-in-law in 2005. I got a 8-page handwritten letter on stationery that I pull out this envelope. I'm thinking it's a check for my husband's birthday present, and out fall these little literature pieces that have been cut out of a brochure, filling this envelope and this handwritten letter. And it's like, she's trying to save me for Jesus, but the way that she went about it was so invasive and upsetting. And I'm like, okay, so I'm looking at these little pieces of paper, and one of them has Exodus 22:18 written on it. I'm like, okay, now you're threatening to murder me. I'm not cool with this. And it's like, they really think that church is right, that they're the only one who's going to be saved. And I can understand if you come at it with I really love this person, but your fear is what drives you. Don't do that to people. Don't help me because you want to score points with your God upstairs. That's not cool. Like, especially most Christians will tell you, you're not saving me for your bonus points in the afterlife. That's not why you're supposed to be doing this. And that's definitely not how to go about doing it. So I was telling her, like, we don't proselytize. We don't recruit. We will actively tell you, like, go check out something else first and go do this. Find yourself, find where you're going to be. Meet yourself where you're at. Witchcraft is not the answer. Like, go away and come back later.
Yeah,
definitely. So coming from that Christian background, like, I was a missionary for a long time. Most people like look at me and go, what? Yeah. But it started young. They start indoctrinating very young and filling your mind with this idea that you are somehow unsafe because people like us are walking the earth, which could not be further from the truth. And when you get those messages from people, from loved ones, it's devastating. Like, this is supposed to be your family. and they're basically condemning you without understanding you. So yeah, that's an awful thing to experience. We are rebels. Together, enter the chamber of the heart where your spirit yearns to be reborn. Ignite that spark, fan that glowing flame, and warm yourself to your core with meaningful conversations, thundering heartbeats, countless dreams, inspiring stories, ecstatic devotion, healing ceremonies, and excursions into the wilds of the soul. Join me, Leandra Witchwood, in the Rebel Mystic community as we come together and explore the radical, rebellious act of creating sisterhood and engaging in deep self-care. So I have a question. Let's see. So you talked a little bit about intuitive abilities, and I see a lot of people giving advice on, for new witches or new people coming into their abilities about like their intuition and how to trust it. What would your advice be for anyone trying to tap in and trust their abilities?
I love this question because I teach classes on not just intuitive ability, but really allowing that trust in yourself. Mm-hmm. And my favorite exercise is always, send them home with homework. It looks like every time I get in the car, every time, we'll say start at a week. Just tell yourself you're going to do this for a week and you'll move on from there. Every time you get in the car, take a second and visualize the route that you're going to take to get wherever you're going to take. Just pull up the GPS in your brain and look at the route you're going to take. And look and see if there are any hazards in your way. Is there a cop down the street shooting radar that might pull you over? Is there, a car off the side of the road that can cause an issue? Figure that out. Just take that little half a second trip to wherever you're going to go and look with your internal eyes. See if there's anything that jumps out, because that is going to give you real-time feedback that says, I was right or I was wrong. It'll help you hone in on immediacy, because things like getting a speeding ticket that you can't afford right now helps increase that little bit of pressure that says, okay, this is something that is important to me, so I can keep myself from being over my budget this week. You'll get real-time feedback. You get to really fine tune it because you're looking in specific places. Okay. I thought that I was going to see a police officer shooting traffic at the corner of Main and First. So you're getting very specific information, detailed feedback, and it's immediate. You don't have to wait and see if 6 months from now, that thing that you thought happened. You're getting it right now when I need it. So it's one of the greatest things because it allows you not just to understand your own internal landscape and your own language, because we all have different experiences. My theys and thems, they'll give me a Simpsons reference rather than say, oh, well, this one time 8 years ago, you met this guy. I don't know who that guy is. I got stuff to do. So your inner landscape develops that language that you understand. So especially in dealing with clients, I'm always explaining, because I get a picture, I'm laughing. There's context here, but the person who's getting the reading doesn't have that yet. So I got to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But it's a great thing because not only does it allow you that feedback, but a lot of intuition is embodied. Yeah. So especially when I'm working remotely, over Zoom, I had a class we were looking at diagnosing and treating different illnesses and psychically, like writing down what's wrong with someone. We started working on travel, and so we're partnered with our intuitive partners and say, okay, is Susie going to be traveling anywhere in this next 6 months? And it was very difficult because it's over COVID. So some people aren't going to travel for the next 3 years. Some people have to travel for work. So it's a little bit more heightened. It's a little bit more involved. So we say, okay, my my partner, we don't know each other. We're all over the country and in different cases, different parts of the world. And my partner, I say, okay, is Susie going to go anywhere in the next 6 months? And I felt like somebody pinched my finger. I'm like, okay, what is that? Anybody who's ever been to Michigan knows that the map of Michigan is your hand. So somebody will say, oh, I'm right here in the middle of the palm of the mound of Venus. Everybody says, okay, I'm here, you're over here. That's how you get to my thumb. But that's how Michigan is. They use that as the map. So when I pinched my finger, I told her, I said, you're going right here. And she says, oh my God. And I said, I see like one of those brown signs of a Jeep going over craggly mountains. And she says, like, that's the state park sign for my area where my dad has a cabin that we're planning on going to his cabin in November. And so his cabin is right at the edge of the state park. That's right here at the tip of your index finger.
Nice.
And so I didn't have any context for it, but she did. So our intuitive bits, they know things that we don't know, even though it's on some levels, it's also us.
Yeah. And I think that's where people like really get discombobulated or frustrated because it doesn't make sense to them.
Yes.
So they're trying to make sense of it on their own knowledge base and through their own terms, instead of just speaking it like, okay, I've got a pinch on my finger. This is where you're going. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to you personally as the intuitive, it's going to make sense potentially, hopefully, to the person you're speaking to. I like that. That's a good example.
That same class, we're working on intuiting and understanding those bodily responses, those signals. And I kept, even though I was sitting, I kept feeling this tugging at the back of my waistband of my jeans, like somebody was pulling on a belt that I wasn't wearing. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to decide if that means south, if that mean what does that feeling mean? Because there's sort of a little bounce that goes to it. And so every time I felt that feeling, the person I was talking to was going on vacation somewhere south. But it was more specific than that. It was actually because I live in Delaware, all the cruises are south of me. So every time someone was going on a cruise, I got that feeling. So it wasn't just south, it was south. And it was a trip over water. So it was that little buoyant bobbing up and down that I was feeling, but I had to get enough practice to be able to get that little bit of extra information.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. See, I love this stuff. I love like the obscure coming into, clarity. That's one of my favorite things.
It's so great as a teacher when you can see the light bulb moment where they connect something you're talking about with something they're experiencing. Like, that's why I do this.
Yeah. And it's interesting to get a lot of physical responses to like your intuitive messaging comes physically. That's really interesting. Would you say that's common or like 50-50? Like I've never heard of that, like in a personal instance like this. It's so fascinating.
I think it'd be probably 30%. And I think it's so clear in me because I've spent so much time. The idea of being well went out the window when I was 21. But the pieces and the parts of that, the hypervigilance that comes from monitoring your person for any changes because of chronic illness, like, okay, I know I need to ice my knee, or I know I need to take my cane in the car with me tomorrow because I'm going to be sore. You spend so much time hyperfixating on the monitoring your body for signs of stress, it makes it easier for you to recognize that that's a thing rather than it just being a rare gift. It's just how much time and attention people allow themselves to look at their bodies, to feel part of their person. There's so much either A, disassociation because trauma, or B, they're so busy living their life that they have the option of not thinking about their body a whole lot. I mean, this is a meat suit that drags their ghosts around. But a lot of people have the luxury of not having to stop and think about that a lot.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting. My intuitive messaging, especially when I do divination, is more pictures of situations in my head with like overarching single words. Like I've had that before where there's really just one word that's coming through, or like a situation that can be summarized, succinctly. And then I can say, and for some reason, like there's a red shirt, like that's like usually where my intuition comes from, is just these like mental pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a client come to me, and it's probably 2006 or 2007. And she sat down across from me at the table and she said, "I'm not here for me." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you could see it was almost as if she was riding next to her body. You could see her spirit like sort of broken apart." I'm like, okay, she's dealing with a lot. And she said, "My family and I were looking to go on vacation." And I'm like, "That's not why you're here." It was, but it wasn't. She said, "Look, I know that this is not really a thing, but it's important that I at least give myself a chance to ask, where could this possibly be going?" She says, "My family and I were planning a vacation for this summer, and my dad is in hospice. So I don't want to leave and go on vacation and him cross the veil by himself. I want him to have family around. The hospice people are really lovely and sweet, and they do a difficult job, but I want to make sure that he's not alone." And I opened my mouth to tell her, like, I don't know that. It wasn't my job to know that. But what came out was a picture of a calendar and like a Hawaiian sunset on it, and somebody flipping the page from May to June. And so what came out was, he won't see June. Like they're showing me a sunset on May. So that's what I have for you. Like, I don't know this. This is coming from that magical sphere in the right side of my ear where my people talk to me. So I don't know what that, I like to think I know what that means, but I'm going to make sure that you know that this is not me. This is not something that I do, especially on purpose. So this is the information I have for you. She said, "Thank you very much. That's right around when we were planning to go, so I know we can move that." Awesome. Fantastic. So she comes back to me in August and says, he crossed over before, right around sunset, right around dusk at the end of May. So he would have been alone, and I'm glad that I put off vacation so we could actually make sure to be there for him. We don't know how we know the things we know. I'm listening to them when I'm turning cards. Like there's the piece that lives in your solar plexus that comes out, but there's also, your spirit guides, your people who say, "Oh, you know what? Check this out. Just here's a little picture." Yeah. So the pictures are so much a part of that, because we get told, pictures worth 1,000 words, and they're listening. So guess what? Here's a picture for you.
Tell listeners how they can find you.
The first 30 pages or so of each one of my books is available free to download at amyblackthorn.com. It'll talk about how to get in touch with me if you'd like to book a reading, if you'd like to have me come and speak at your shop, at your event, if you're a conference. Those details are amyblackthorn.com. If you want to check out my tea selections, there's a tarot category, there's different gods and spirits, there's planetary astrology sections. Each one has their own little mysteries and nooks and crannies. You can check those out at blackthornsbotanicals.com. And there's always the fun over on TikTok. You can find me at Amy Blackthorn Author with all little underscores in between. The same for Instagram and a bunch of other places. You can find me at my Facebook page, Amy Blackthorn Author. Over on TikTok, every so often we're playing the herbal dating game. So I'll let you know what this plant does magically, and you'll let me know what plant you think it is and whether or not you can vibe with that different plant. It's a lot of fun, and it's more relaxed over there. And if you'd like an autographed copy, they are on blackthornsbotanicals.com.
That concludes part 1 of our interview with Amy Blackthorn. Join us next time on October 30th to hear the rest of our intense personal conversation.
Merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.
Thank you for joining us on the Magick Kitchen Podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com,
for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elyse Welles, and I can be found at Seeking Numina on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and seekingnumina.com. That's Seeking, Numina.